Ah, crap.
What'd you do this time?
Well, I'm playing Moncala, and I just really screwed myself. Welcome to the Rewatchers in the Labyrinth. We're back for another beautiful rewatch. This week was the choice of Tyler McKinley. Yeah, I definitely forgot that as I was mid saying it. I'm here, and I'm Mitchell Marshall, and my co-hosts are
Tyler Harris.
Tyler McKinley. Fucking hammers.
Gwen Hammer.
Oh,
and
my.
I'm Justin Hammer.
Oh, that was painful.
I was ready to let it go as long as, we could be here
Thank
for
you
an hour.
breaking, Gwen.
It's funny because I feel like it's difficult every week, but also I feel like we're saying it in the same order every week, which just means we've settled into like the roles of or something. I don't know. It's really it's a good social experiment.
I just want you guys to know for closing, you're going to have to go in a specific order, and it's going to be fun.
Shit.
I just feel like whenever Tyler Harris says his name, I have to say mine right after because we're like Marley and Marley from Muppets Christmas Carol, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
that's exactly how I've always thought of us.
we're business partners who really are just dead. We have no effect on the field that we are in.
Do you guys think if people don't know us and they listen to this, let's say 12 episodes of this podcast, that they would be able to hear each voice and tell me which Tyler was which Tyler?
No.
Because, your voices are pretty different, but it's tough.
I don't know.
Faces.
I don't know.
We do have that podcast where Tyler McKinley introduced himself as Tyler Harris. So I don't
Everyone
know.
was able to do it prior to that, and then after that episode, it was like, I don't fucking know anymore. I don't even know if they know.
Is that even their real name? Okay. So we watched Pan's Labyrinth. Guillermo del Toro. I can't speak right now.
I believe it's pronounced Guillermo del Toro, but we'll figure it out.
You need to roll your R's a little bit more.
Problem. But in case you have not seen that movie, I'm going to tell you every single detail that happens in the entire film so that you know before we talk about it. Here we go. There's fighting in the hills after a civil war. Underworld, Rapunzel dreams of sun and escapes losing her memory. A young girl and her knocked-up mother head to the countryside. She finds an old statue that vomits a large insect. Dad, a.k.a. evil stepfather, turns out to be an asshole military man. Ophelia follows the insect under an archway into a stone maze, but then Mercedes warns her it's hella old and she'll get lost. Ophelia tells a bedtime story to her unborn half-brother. It's about a poisonous, eternal, life-giving rose, but that's all we get. Captain Von Deuce shoots a farmer and bashes his son's face in with a bottle, and they were just hunting rabbit. Insect Homie has a chat with Ophelia and reforms into a fairy before heading into the maze. Down a spiral staircase, tree nymph Goat Fawn, who pulls a Hagrid and tells Ophelia she isn't human, she's a Spanish Moana, princess of the underworld. He gives her the Book of the Crossroads. It's all blank. The help laments the picky, condescending demands of El Capitan. Ophelia opens the book in private, and it starts to fill in, but her mom won't shut up about a new dress. Mercedes offers milk and goes straight to the cow teat. Ophelia follows her book down inside of a tree to a beetle's mud pit. Then a giant frog disembowels itself so she can grab a key from its blubber. In the meantime, her fancy dress is blown away and been ruined. El Capitan finds a rebel smoldering fire. Over dinner, he brags to important people that they are close to finding and destroying the lesser humans. Mercedes pretends to get wood and seemingly signal someone. Ophelia is in trouble, but she's just stoked to tell the insect fairy that she has the key to the labyrinth. The fawn gives her magic chalk and more instructions. Ophelia fails a Rorschach test and her mom bleeds profusely. Mercedes and the doctor take provisions to the gorillas in the hills, including her brother Pedro. Fawn shows up to discipline Ophelia, telling her how to help her mom and giving her tools for her next task. Doctor saws off a rebel's leg, and it's really painful to watch. Ophelia uses the magic chalk to create a portal to the underworld. There, a cloakless Dementor is hosting a silent feast, and the room is decorated by paintings of him murdering children. Ophelia finds a lock for her key, and a dagger awaits her. She eats a grape, breaking the rules, and the kid-killing zombie thing waits up and eats her fairy guides, who were trying to warn her. Oh, and he has eyeballs in his palms. She gets back to her portal moments too late and chalks to safety with seconds to spare. Captain shaves daily and tells the doctor if he has to choose, save the baby, not the mom, not knowing Ophelia's under the bed. The rebels cause a train wreck, but it's just a diversion for an attack. The rebels lose even with the high ground. Maybe Anakin had a chance. Some guy who I thought was Pedro, but is apparently not, I learned at the very end of the movie, the lone survivor. Insect Fairy snitches to the fawn about Ophelia being a grapist. He warns Ophelia she will be immortal and fairy shit will fade away. Doc treats Pedro and Captain connects the dots that he's been helping the rebel scum. Then he finds the mandrake Malk and the fawn had Ophelia put under her mom's bed to heal her. Mom denounces magic and bursts prematurely as the mandrake burns in the fire. Mom dies. Captain shoots Doc dead. He pretty much tells Mercedes she knows she's a traitor. She tries to escape in the night with Ophelia and gets caught. As Captain preps for some torture, Mercedes she escapes with a hidden knife and shanks him a few times, including his cheek. Is this the origin story of the Joker? Caught on the run, rebels arrive right before she can slit her own throat to escape torture. Fawn returns with a final chance for Ophelia, but she has to kidnap her baby bro and get to the labyrinth. El Capitan stitches his own face. He might be an alcoholic, and he finds the magic chalk. Ophelia drugs him and runs away with the baby. Battle begins to erupt, and he chases her into the maze. Fawn wants... Shit, I don't know what I wrote. Fawn has the Dementor's cabinet dagger and wants Ophelia to shed innocent blood of her little brother to return the princess to glory. Captain shows up and shoots Ophelia, taking her brother. The rebels await the captain as he emerges from the maze. He hands the baby to Mercedes and gets Captain his ass. Ophelia lies at the top of the underworld dying entrance, bleeding into the water. Her real underworld dad awakens her in his throne room, which is also the set for Asgard. She passed the test by being selfless, and it ended like every other fairy tale. Mercedes cries over the mortal body of Ophelia.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did you describe birth as bursting early?
I thought I said birthing, but if I said
heard
bursting
as well.
it could have happened, guys. It's my first summary since Twin Peaks, so yeah.
Is it really? This is the
could have
first time you've...
I'm pretty sure. Maybe
Okay.
I missed it. I don't know. It was fun. I missed it, but this was a tough one to do because of the subs. So, but I'm glad it happened. I'm glad all that went down. It was a delightful movie. This is my first viewing of this film. So, good for me getting in all the classics. Let's start. Tyler, you've kind of already said how much you love this. Tell us why you enjoy it so much and what you learned on this rewatch.
I first saw this movie in 2007, 8 or something. I think 2007. And it was kind of along that same arc, because like 2006 is when I really started to get really watching movies more than just to pass the time, to really dig deep into them. So this was very early on in that for me. And over the years, I've gotten more and more out of it, more and more different things. I really love this movie because several reasons. First, Guillermo del Toro's art department is fucking incredible. I don't know who he uses, but he relies heavily on makeup and prosthetics and making things a lot more physical and using as little CGI as he has to, which alone is a cool thing, which I appreciate in film, which is kind of not a completely lost thing because a lot of people are bringing it back, but something that's a little more on the rare side. But it's not only just the physicality, it's the actual artistic design of a lot of the creatures and a lot of wonderful unsung performances of body actors who do a lot of things in the makeup to bring those characters to life, which creates such a real tangible world that you can lose yourself in. And those, I think, are fewer and far between with modern cinema. so many things are just all on a green screen, and you kind of like, I get why it is, and I think it gets bashed on maybe a little too much, but it does kind of give a disconnect to the viewer and believing your world as much. So I really appreciate the physicality of it, the fantastical nature of his movies, and this movie in particular takes a little bit more of a serious tone than a lot of his other movies, and is really a wonderful, I don't want to say the word critique, because it's more of a observance, an analytical viewing of the concept of religion in the lives of human beings. There are some very pointed critiques at elements of religion in this film, but there's also some positive things, which I find very refreshing, to just be a completely analytical viewing of that subject, where I feel like in a lot of film now, it's like critiquing religion gets it's overdone, in my opinion, and a lot of people get way more praise than they deserve for doing it, where I feel like this movie is more original with the things it has to say about it, and especially in the way it says them and visually communicates those ideas. And so that definitely had a profound impact on me viewing it, with all those layers. But even just on the surface, it's enjoyable without even digging into any of that, just simply because of this kind of adult fairy tale it creates, and creates this wonderful, beautiful arc for this character.
I agree, and something Del Toro said that I've seen during researches, he was kind of like, once a Catholic, always a Catholic, and there's a huge portion of Europe that is just Catholic by culture almost, and that is somewhat ingrained in him. But he also points to a few things in the movie that are clearly critiquing, but he's also like, there's these other elements of the influence. And I think if you're going to critique or comment, I would almost call it comment, it is much better done through art than through, it seems like we have a million think pieces to the point where it's not effectively helping humanity anymore. Look at this, very dominating of our thing in the psyche of so much of the world in religion. But I really liked it. I actually thought I was in for a little bit more of a I don't want to say horror, but a little bit more of a grotesque and maybe more fantastical film. So I was actually delighted with a lot of the action that was coming around. And if I had one thing, or if I think about some spaces, and I just watched this, so I wish I had a little more time to reflect, but I actually kind of wish I had more of everything. I wanted her to spend some more time in these kind of elements of the fantastical world and dig in deeper. But the things that do cross between worlds, I think, are just subtle enough and just enjoyable enough to really make it work and come full circle. But I do wish there's more we could have had to make the ending impact for me. But Justin, Tyler, Gwen, do any of you guys have any other just kind of broad opening thoughts on this watch of Pan's Labyrinth?
No, I mean, I have some specific stuff I want to say, but I don't. Yeah, go ahead, Justin. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries. I was just gonna say this is also my first time seeing this movie as well, and I either totally missed out on like a joke about this movie. Like Tyler, you were saying that you wanted to choose something fun, and this movie was not fun at all. I was like, I thought that was like actually what we were going into. It was like some sort of fantasy film. It was just like a good old time, like Lord of the Rings or something, and like. I kept waiting for like more of the fantasy side of stuff to happen, and then all of a sudden people are getting shot and a guy gets his face bashed in with a bottle, and yeah, it was a little bit more heavy than I was prepared to consume today, but yeah, so that happened, and
I'm so sorry.
I told my mom that we were watching this. She's like, "Oh, the one with David Bowie," and I was like, "Sure." I don't know, like.
That's the hardest part about me loving this movie so much is whenever you tell anyone this is in your top 3 films, they're like, "Oh yeah, the one with David Bowie." Like,
and maybe that's why that was in my head. Like that must be like where that is coming from. I have no idea.
I actually have never seen all of the movie Labyrinth with David Bowie.
Yeah, I've never seen that
I've
one.
seen
either.
clips. I've seen enough clips to be like, maybe don't want to. So yeah, I don't know, but everyone always thinks that's what I'm talking about.
One thing I need to do a little bit more research into this. I told Gwen while we were watching that I know literally nothing about Spain's involvement during like World War II or anything, and um, if I remember correctly, they talked about a civil war at the beginning. Is that
Yeah, it's the Spanish Civil
Yeah.
War, which took place, I believe, right before World War II.
okay?
Yeah, it goes right up to the 40s, but it's still kind of subtly happening. So Spain's never really a big force in World War II. But
Is the Civil War when Franco took over, or was that
Yes.
after the war? Okay.
Yeah, is when Franco took over, and then what we see in the movie is actually after the war is technically over, and you just have
Right.
this
So,
group
yeah.
of rebels.
Yeah, they call them I looked up the specific type of guerrilla warriors, if you will, that these are, and it looks like they were just like in pockets like this and just trying to wreak havoc. And I think that they were hoping that with the war engulfing Europe, that it would give them a chance to also take some more power in Spain. But I won't pretend I know how that turns out.
Yeah, like not knowing really any of the history there, and I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to this, but like I had World War II just on my mind while I was watching this, just because that was like the closest thing I could grab onto, and there was that the scene with the it's called the Pale Man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the scene with the Pale Man, and there's just that shot of all of the shoes that are piled up, and
Oh, yeah.
having World War II on my mind, like the imagery there of the clothing and the jewelry and the shoes of people who had been killed in the concentration camps and stuff, like that was kind of what I like. Just that imagery there, that was kind of where my mind went, and just how horrifying that entire experience was of this child trying to process these traumatic events, living through all of that. And yeah, that was really vivid and harsh.
Yeah, there's a few things in this, like obviously it's graphic with its fantastical stuff, and then but like some of the torture, the murder, the stabbing, the shooting, like this is a movie that could be edited slightly differently and be PG-13, but I like that Del Toro is just so the grotesque means something and adds something to his stories, where he doesn't feel the need to not allow that graphic nature to be involved. And this did, I believe, win Best Production Design for the Oscar and the BAFTA, which is cool. And yeah, I think it just shows that everything he wanted to show, he was going to choose, and it's really beautifully done.
And it is an absolute fucking crime that it did not even win for Best Foreign Language Film at the time, and not nominated for Best Picture, which I think is stupid.
Well, I looked at like the Spanish Oscars, and it looks like it wasn't even that well thought of there, and only after like a bunch of American critics put it at number one on their lists for the year did they realize, oh, this is like the film that we need to submit to stuff. So it seems maybe there was some prejudice against like the fact that it is a genre film. Even in Spain at the time, they didn't recognize how awesome it was. But Del Toro is, I believe he's Mexican, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's a Mexican Spanish produced film, but this was all done in Spain with Spanish crew and everything, and mostly Spanish actors. Funny enough, the faun is played by a guy named Doug Jones.
Yeah.
Let's talk about him.
Yeah, Tyler, do you want to talk about him a little bit?
Oh yeah, I just I mean he's kind of been the creatures in pretty
He's
much
like
all of Del
the
Toro's
non-CGI
movies.
Andy Serkis, right?
Pretty
Like,
much,
he's been
yeah.
in a lot
That's
of
actually
movies
not a
where he
bad
plays
comparison.
Yeah.
He was the Silver Surfer in the, in the first
Yeah.
Fantastic Four movies they made. But yeah, he is fantastic, and it's incredible to watch this where he's the faun and the Pale Man, and like also does like Abe Sapien and Hellboy, and like just the the way that he creates a character physically is so incredible, and it's crazy. I mean, even Shape of Water, he was also Abe Sapien in Shape of Water. But
Sexy
yeah,
Salient, yeah.
I think it's so incredible to look at all those roles and how different they are. And I think in the first Hellboy, I'm not sure if this is true. I can't remember if he does the voice of Abe Sapien in the first Hellboy. I don't think he does. But I might be wrong on that. But anyways, the idea of literally just even creating the physical embodiment of so many of these characters is incredible. And it really does lend such uh, a real and like realized world for all of these things I've seen him in. Is in particularly Del Toro's stuff, but yeah, he is fantastic. I think definitely not a name that people know that enough people know for the work he does.
And he tried to learn Spanish, or at least have a big comprehension of Spanish for this role. And he didn't want to do it phonetically. He tried to really do the lines, and so he did. And eventually, Del Toro dubbed over him anyway. Um,
Fair
but
enough.
interesting with the
The
language
effort's
on
important.
yeah. I mean, you got to have the best product. I thought the
Yeah.
creature sounded great, but apparently, two things with this: Del Toro got offered a lot more money to do this movie in English, and I'm glad he didn't. I mean, he has worked in English plenty, but I kind of same with Bong Joon-ho. I really like that we have foreign directors bringing their style, and they can choose which language benefits. And the budget apparently on this was pretty tight. That's why I mentioned in the summary that flower scene where we find out there's the poison flower that gives eternal life or something. Originally, there was supposed to be a dragon in it, and they just didn't have the money. And so I wonder, what else got left out. And then Del Toro actually wrote the subtitles for this movie because he hated the English subtitles that were done on his last movie, or one of his previous movies called The Devil's Backbone, which is supposed to be like he calls it a spiritual prequel to this. It's not necessarily in the same world, but he really feels they're connected. So it's just interesting. The language is a big factor and how he specifically got what he needed out of it. And also he called it Pan's Labyrinth in English, and in Spanish it's called The Labyrinth of the Faun, which that faun is apparently not. I know about the labyrinth in Roman and Greek mythology, but I think of it as Daedalus, whatever that guy's name is. I think of it as his, but apparently in Roman mythology it's Pan's. So I was like, was this Pan? And apparently it's not. But interesting title that they chose for the English language, but just kind of shows some of like the production things that went on behind the scenes, and Del Toro just made a really dope ass movie.
I thought that was
Oh,
an
true.
interesting choice because isn't Pan in mythology? He's kind of a trickster, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I was expecting more trickster from the Fawn character, and then learning after I finished watching the movie that it wasn't actually Pan. It's like, oh, that makes a little more sense why my expectations weren't fulfilled.
Yeah, I think I agree. It is a weird, interesting choice. I think that there is a sense of kind of not necessarily trickery, but a misdirect from him. Of at the end we have him being like, "No, you got to stab the baby," and then at the very end he's like, "Ah, see, just kidding, not stabbing it was a test," like that type of thing, which is an interesting concept of how fawns are often presented in mythology. Of they're either kind of like one or the other. Usually it's either they're very much there to trick the protagonist and make their life hell, or to help them through a situation where they are lost. And this kind of borrows a little bit from both, mostly on the helping side. But I found it interesting how they took the main tropes of what a faun is in mythology, because like you kind of think of another pop. Yeah, exactly. Another pop culture faun is Mr. Tumnus, and he's very much the guide to the lost travelers, as this faun also is. So yeah, I found that very interesting for that character.
Yeah.
But
I
never
think
quite trustworthy. Sorry, go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple choices like along those lines where it's like you may be expecting something, and it gives you something else. Like, and for me, the first time I saw this movie, it was the way that the fairies are portrayed, particularly at the beginning, where it's like they're just bugs essentially, and then you have that moment where change their shape to a more like what you might traditionally think of as a fairy. But I think that that's such an interesting, like to me, that's such a great choice, because it pulls like that choice alone of just having the fairies, like when she first sees that bug and then tells her mom she's seen a fairy, like that to me pulls the fantastic elements of this movie way closer to the real world. And then later on in the movie, that closeness, you begin to question the closeness again. You know what I mean? Because it feels like they're setting it up to be all real. And then there are these moments where you're meant to question if that's actually happening, what is actually going on. And I think that because of those small choices, like it makes that so much more effective later on, if that makes sense. But,
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting point that I mean, I've always noticed, but I feel like was a lot more apparent to me this time watching of how a lot of those things are represented to be kind of Ophelia is really the only one who can see any of this,
mhm.
and how it's probably all in her head. And that's kind of the overall kind of analytical aspect of the film, of which makes the ending more sad to me.
Oh yeah.
It makes it hit a lot harder. That I mean, I don't think this movie necessarily says one way or the other, you know, what happens after we die, but I think that what Ophelia is seeing at the end is more just because of what her beliefs in her own kind of fairy tale, which is representative of what she believes spiritually or religiously, of where she will end up, and to be reunited with her loved ones, and that she is a princess and that she has a grander destiny. When, from what this film says and how it looks at it, it's really sad because she probably isn't, you know, that's
Oh.
probably not where she ends up. But I think, I don't know, go ahead, Gwen.
Oh, I liked that variation of the ending so much better than, like, for example, the little matchstick girl, because Ophelia creates this story for herself and makes choices within the story, and at the end she gives herself a very happy ending and chooses or experiences hope for herself in an afterlife, whereas like with the little matchstick girl it's supposed to be like, oh, well, poor people die and it's sad, but then they go to heaven, so we can feel okay about it, which I really, really, really fucking hate a lot. And so I really liked that it was her choice and her belief, even if it's not a belief that I share. I like that it's something that she believed and experienced for herself versus like it being something for the rest of the world to feel better about. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's a great point. I think that's what makes the ending, like I said, it's sad, but it is a very beautiful thing, because the commentary on pretty much religion in this film is not so much to make a judgment on it, but to just be analytical and be like, what do we do as human beings? What do we tell ourselves? What coping mechanisms do we use to get through the shit that we have to go through? And maybe that is something of value, even if it isn't necessarily true. Maybe there is value in that too, and something very human in that, on a survival evolution level, to cope with the hard things and to eventually be at peace with the concept of death or whatever it may be.
I thought about death quite a bit while watching this, but not as much in direct religious tones. Because I like how you guys both interpreted that from both of those perspectives, because I think that's what the director and all of the storytellers would have wanted. I think that's important. I think those were on their mind, but whatever you take from is important, because to me, and I think this might be the optimist in me, regardless of the death, all of the fantastical elements were real, and that's kind of what Del Toro said afterwards. But he's like, I'm glad to have anybody interpret it however they want. But like, I was actually interested to see if there was ever a consideration of ending the movie without the flash to the fantastical world. And the more I think about it, the more I see like religious connections. But just for me, that's I think what Gwen said is great, because it is, yeah, it's like we interpret this movie, it's also left up to this young girl to interpret what's in her heart and how she sees things. And when we see her death, then that's something for each character in the audience to examine independently, because in the end, it is a happy ending regardless. I mean, the bad guy loses. The little brother survives, if that means anything. I mean, he's half, El Capitan asshole, but yeah, for me, I really enjoyed it. And whenever I watch these, if a character wakes up and something was all a dream, I feel like I've been cheated. Like I'm in a world to be in a world. And so I enjoyed seeing the through lines between the two worlds and the way this young girl, and in fact, the protagonist was supposed to be a couple years younger when they originally wrote it, was having to cope with that. And she made nonsensical choices at times, but it completely made sense for her character. But yeah, when it comes down to her death, I really like the way that you guys kind of both took to that and interpreted it. But I was happy to I want to spend more time there. And sorry, Tyler, you go ahead. I do want to talk about the failed sequel that almost happened as well.
Okay. Well, I think you bring up an interesting point of it, like with the different views on what the validity of these kind of supernatural fantasy experiences are. I think that makes, and I think 100% valid. I'm not trying to discredit that. I think that makes a certain aspect of this film even more interesting to look at, of the moment right before her death where Captain Vidal comes into the maze at the end of the labyrinth where she is, and he can't see the fawn,
right?
Even though he's clearly there. And I think with that, being able to look at that from multiple angles, there's some interesting ways to interpret that, considering what Captain Vidal represents in this film.
Yeah.
Just while we're talking about death, because there's a fucking lot of it in this movie, the thing, one of the moments that always sticks out to me in this and kind of ties into the idea of, I mean, if we can get more general than religion, the idea of a set of beliefs, at least. If you look at the way that Pedro dies, which is the hardest scene for me to watch, not his death, but the interrogation, when he's trying to count to three, like really messes me up in ways I don't know if I fully can explain or understand. But I look at the death of him and of the doctor as representing also, they are also kind of doing the same thing that Ophelia is doing, but they are given this courage in situations because of what they believe. And in the case of the doctor, it's basically, that moment is so fucking beautiful and tragic of him, talking about, I can't just follow orders without questioning. That takes a special type of person like you. And then walking away and getting shot. Like, it is such an incredibly powerful moment. And then just before that, we have Pedro asking for death, which is just heartbreaking. But I think, like, the deaths in this movie that feel, I don't know if the word dignified is correct, but the moments where it feels like characters are facing death with courage, as opposed to someone like the captain, who we see kind of, I think, is always thinking about death and is so aware of it throughout the movie. But like, I look at those other characters and I see this, I don't know if it's dignity or what, but those moments feel so poignant and powerful. And each of them have these very strong beliefs or convictions, at least, that I think lend that to them before their deaths. And I think that's such a beautiful, like, the way it's presented here is so beautiful. And it really stands out to me for sure.
I think it's easy for me to accept those deaths too, and not, in as much as it can be, because, and I don't know if it's because we're kind of going back and forth between the underworld and this. Not that I even think that underworld is related to like where these humans would go after. Every time they pass by a tree, they used it as a transition a lot, but they would also just do it, and you didn't quite know what was going to come out on the other end, and it usually created a shift in tone. And then as the movie continued to stay so dark, I was kind of ready for people to die so often that when it happened, you're right, that their emotional approach to it made it really tolerable for me. Like I felt like we were playing between two worlds and between life and death pretty loosely, and interestingly made the deaths easier for me, but made me value those characters even more, and maybe that goes along with the death that I want there to be more for them in that case. And like you said about the captain, I want to relate him real quick to Tywin Lannister, who the biggest thing that he always talks about is legacy. And he talks about Jaime, who's part of the Kingsguard, shouldn't actually have children. That's technically against the law. And he wants this Lannister brood to not only become the kings and queens, to have this dynasty, or a dynasty as he says it, sort of like the Targaryens had. But it is interesting to think that right before that man died, we knew how important having a male heir, as we see all the time in film and everything, was to him, and how much he wanted him to know. And I love that they took that away from him, because that's really one of the only things he had of value besides his pride, which was built up on such false bravado.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think his I don't know, I definitely love how the main character in this story is a little girl. Because I think there's a lot of critique in this film of how religion treats women, and how a lot of belief systems, kind of suppress them in a lot of aspects. And Captain Vidal is definitely kind of the forefront of that metaphor in this film, of his male heir is everything. It's more important than his wife surviving. It is the way he treats the women around him in his home is not great. And to have kind of this little girl who is kind of a demographic multiple times messaged of kind of normally a character who would be abused, to kind of overcome these trials and to overcome these oppressive theologies, I guess you could say, is very beautiful and very poignant, and very, what's the word I want, present in our time. Also I just spaced on her name. The main, like, Mercedes, yeah. And just how she is such a strong character, and makes a lot of hard choices where she has kind of her own thing going on, but is willing to step out and put her neck on the line for this girl. I think there's just a great relationship between those two characters, and especially with how her mother treats her, and how that sense of duty kind of with her mother and what she believes is kind of harmful to her daughter. And so she kind of has this adoptive mother's relationship, so to speak.
The mother seems almost entrapped, and she doesn't mention it, but when her daughter says, "Why couldn't it have just been us?" She, something we see in movies all the time. It's like there was such a time, and this one is somewhat based in our history, that like surviving on your own as a young female with a child in that time was just nearly impossible, and that led to so many people getting into terrible relationships. And there's such blatant misogyny that it's interesting to see the younger, I guess Mercedes isn't that much younger, but the two younger females really trying to not allow that. And they both grew up in different ways. It seems like Mercedes grew up in this civil war, in the midst of it, and having to trust her brother but not be part of this organized society where in which she might have been interested in that as well, which I find really interesting. Tyler Harris, I was wondering, the little girl's name is Ophelia. I don't really know I know Ophelia is a very central Shakespearean character. Does she have any connections, or do you think that's complete happenstance?
I mean, I think, I mean, Ophelia from Hamlet has, I think, for a long time just became a trope for a tragic female character, and also her death does come at perhaps a mental break, things like that. So if you're looking at Ophelia as maybe someone who is seeing things that aren't there, or has placed her beliefs in something that aren't real, then I think it is. I think the main difference is that when you see Ophelia in Hamlet, you very much see her as mentally broken for good reason. So a lot of bad shit happens during that play. But I think if you were going to draw that connection, like Ophelia in Pan's Labyrinth, we see things from her perspective. We're much more in her camp and able to see what she's seeing, I guess. And so in that way, it's a more sympathetic portrayal of that, if that is in fact what this is. But yeah, I mean, I think there are some connections there. Like I said, it's crazy because if you look at Ophelia in Hamlet, you're going to start to see that character in fiction all over the place. But yeah, I do think that there are some interesting connections to draw there, particularly in that they meet a tragic end. And I think in both of those cases are innocent. You know what I mean? They are people who are caught up in things beyond their control, and are their lives are cut short because of it, which is always very sad. But yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to bring up for sure.
Slightly related, can we talk about the mandrake and how it plays into things and Ophelia's choice to engage in that folk magic, I guess? Like, I haven't wrapped my head and my feelings around it very much, so I'm wondering if you guys have thoughts and feelings about it.
I like that element. That's one thing that kind of brought the worlds together in a small, subtle way for me. And mandrakes are this weirdly just one of the weirder tropes that pop up again and again in fantasy. And usually they are this, humanoid tree, but also their healing properties related. Even in Harry Potter, the cry of a mandrake wakes people up when they've been gone on. They've been frozen, petrified, whatever, because of the basilisk. So it was interesting, and then it felt very direct in that it was sitting in milk and just thinking like mother's milk, the fact that it's helping to heal and grow this child who very potentially Ophelia could have used to help sacrifice. And then as the mandrake burns, she dies. And so those parallels like just drew the stories together for me, but also were just really clear. Like there are some things in this there's so much you can read into it, but there's also things very much that are on the surface that show you that this is a fairy tale. And that's one of the elements that I really liked, but I was also questioning whether the fawn was good or bad. So I did not, I was trepidatious, I suppose, in how that was going to go.
I think it's pretty, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but the fact that when the captain comes in and finds it underneath the bed, he seems, I mean, he's an asshole, but his reaction to it seems a little over the top. When you kind of think of him as like the very strict, organized, faith-based beliefs coming across something that's very like almost blood magic-esque in their view. Something very gosh, I'm struggling with words right now. Granola is the best word I can come up with. Like something very much
pagan,
like a
maybe?
like
Pagan, yeah, pagan.
Yeah, something very much like a hedge witch in the woods would come up with like a remedy, and it would seem kind of satanic to that grouping of what he represents. And so I think, I think there is definitely something there, like one was saying, of just her use of buying into that belief system, because I think that that is one of the another interesting facet about that main subject of the film. And sorry I keep bringing it up, but like that is, you have different characters that, like Tyler mentioned, all have different belief systems. I feel like Mercedes is kind of representative of like the atheists of the group, and you have all these different people that have different views and different interpretations. And I think Ophelia is not, she has her own she kind of makes choices to believe what she believes. And sometimes that's borrowing from other people's beliefs. But it is still a conscious choice on her part. So I think the use of the more kind of foresty magic is definitely falls in line with what her character is willing to believe and try.
I think it's really interesting that Wikipedia about Mandrake says that the root is hallucinogenic and narcotic, so it was used for like an anesthetic and to treat, it says, melancholy, convulsions, and mania. So when Ophelia starts using this, it kind of has the opposite effect on her mother and starts waking up her mother and bringing her to a more conscious state. Whereas I feel like uh, Ophelia's engaging in that sort of, the action of engaging in that magic pulls her or pushes her deeper into her fantasy land. And just that, I guess that tension and that difference is interesting to me. Like, I never thought Ophelia was crazy or uh, seeing things that weren't there exactly, but purposefully engaging in a story for herself. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this. Sorry. I just thought that tension was interesting.
Yeah. That was really well said. I'm still stuck in my head, kind of just going back and forth about her psyche, and I'm so interested in her mother as well. It will be I will say, so Del Toro thought about doing a sequel to this, and I wonder how much or what that would have been, but clearly, like, I think he would have had more money, which I like what he did without, and I hope he would have kept that, but that would be interesting. But now I almost wonder if he has a sprawling story that he might serve better with longer time, but he decided to direct Hellboy 2 instead, so thanks a lot, Guillermo. Just kidding.
Hey,
He
Hellboy
chose,
2 is the
yeah.
best Hellboy movie that exists. And
I've
it's
heard
pretty
his two
good.
Hellboys are awesome. He did choose this, doing his own thing over. He was offered Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, so he is clearly he made one good choice, and I kind of wish he would have done the Hobbit movies, which I'm just so sad about. But yeah, did you guys have any other thoughts or specifics about this movie?
I will say I didn't expect it to be as heavy as it has been so far. um, I mean, I'm just trying to think of, like, I think that there's so much in this movie um, that, like, especially what we've talked about, like, those things are all present in, like, big parts of this movie. There's also an incredible joy in this movie, like Tyler was mentioning earlier. The production design and the visuals in this world are so gorgeous, and, like, um just there are moments of this film that are just breathtaking. Like, I even just think of the shot of the captain in his office. There's, like, a really wide shot. I think it's the first time you see that office, and it is just, it's amazing. Like, it is so it's so cool to see the craft of this movie, and for that to come together with this incredibly fantastic story, and like performances. Like, all of the elements are there, and it's just it really is a captivating movie. It always feels like it ends before I think it should, or it's going to, because I just am so lost in it every time I watch it. I love it.
Yeah, the second half of the movie really, I don't want to say it moves, because I don't feel like it. There's obviously some downward pace in the last 30 minutes, but something about it very much felt like I was entrapped, and like I said, you can look into it deep, but I think the overall, like, touchstones of the story are there, and I almost think, like, it gets a little scary, and I guess there's some death, but I think you could show this and maybe only slightly reducive. I don't know what word to use here. Slightly edited for, like, a 13-year-old, and have them, like, understand a lot of the big themes, and understand, like, oh, this was a little weird. This is different from most movies I watch, but I'm completely engaged in understanding with what the good guys and bad guys are doing. It does have, like, that overall fairy tale, and it's engrossing. It's just well done top to bottom when you think of sound, acting, the way it's shot. I love his office too. Like, I thought there was one too many shaving scenes, but it completely gets you into the headspace for that guy. I also love inside the tree where she meets the giant frog thing, and how it just kind of she feeds it the bugs and it just folds inside out. Like, it was creepy and weird, but I loved it, and it felt like it was a moment of fear, but she even says, "I'm not scared," and I think that almost signals to us like, "Don't be scared." And then the element of wonder is still present. So like, yeah, just going through the story, it is actually it's really enjoyable, and while there's intense moments, it shifts that tone pretty well because we're still dealing with a young protagonist, and I'd want to spend more time in that labyrinth, and just not that I need the details behind the mythos, but I think just that tone and that feel. I don't want to be stuck in a labyrinth because that is actually one of my worst fears. But something where that I expected this to be like this girl having to go through like these challenges in a giant underworld maze, so it is, there is so much interesting stuff in this. It's so tight too. Like when you talk about, how good the production is, I feel like anytime they were anywhere, I knew geographically, I understood where they were, why they were there. Like that is all so clear, which movies aren't always that good at keeping that. But if you think about it, we really spend time at this one piece of land and then the hillside next to it and the maze on the grounds. Like it is all really tight and simple, and you know exactly where you exist despite there being so much you don't understand about the world that you're in.
Yeah. There is one thing. So Tyler, I kind of want to ask you this because so like that final moment, like not the final moment, but like when she is seeing, when she's like before the king and she sees her mom and the fawn and everything, there's like this, I don't know how to describe, it's like a smeared, I don't know, like the lighting is like kind of this very distinctly like blurry. I can't. How would you describe that? I'm trying to like think.
It's like from the Xbox PlayStation 2 era where the bloom effects turned way up, and it just looks kind of gross on like a character's face model.
Yeah, it really is. It feels like I have a very distinct emotional connection to that because they do that a lot in the hit from my youth, which I'm sure all of you have seen, Warriors of Virtue.
Oh shit.
They do it like especially when they're in like that flowy like curtained room of the bad guy where he totally jerks off constantly, like that, like the way that is filmed. Every time I see something like that, I'm taken back to just this 13-year-old who's fallen into some power plant and woken up in some fantasy land where only he can read a book. It's fucking weird, but I have such a weird connection. And like for some reason watching Pan's Labyrinth this time, that scene happened, I was like, maybe I need to fucking watch Warriors of Virtue again. And I know there's at least one sequel that went direct to video that I have not seen for sure.
Are you serious?
So, there's at least one, yeah. I think there was also an attempted TV series, but I don't know if it ever like went to like actually got ordered or if it's just a pilot that is like floating around in weird corners of the internet. But I am definitely gonna try to find those because
I
of this
don't
being a
think
Pan's
I
Labyrinth.
would have ever connected these two movies ever in my life unless you'd said that. But I'm so glad you did, because now I'm like, I mean, they're definitely not like similar enough to like do a watch side by side comparison, but like there's to be fair, there's some moments that are like the fantasy elements in Pan's Labyrinth kind of do give that same feel of being like thrust into that like really fantastical world that isn't afraid to be what it wants to be, even if it's going to alienate some people.
One, it does. It's funny that like we've talked about the Labyrinth and stuff, but that era of like, I think of like something like the Dark Crystal 2, or not the Dark Crystal 2, but the Dark Crystal as well, or the Neverending Story, where it's like there was like this time of like these fantasy movies for kids where it was this grittier, darker, there was a lot of that puppetry and a lot of that, and so I feel like all that action feels so much more visceral, and I think that Pan's Labyrinth does have elements of that. While it's not maybe as whimsical as some of those movies, it definitely does. There's like some shared DNA there that I feel like I want to explore a little bit more after watching Pan's Labyrinth this time for some reason, but.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Mitchell brings up a good point that like just the fantastic elements in this are so enjoyable. Just being like, there have been times where back when I had more time with my life and I could just waste time on YouTube for hours at a time, I there were times where I'm like, oh man, I haven't seen Pan's Labyrinth in a while, and I just watch a couple of like the fantasy scenes. Like you could just make a reel of that and show that to people, and it's very enjoyable. They almost feel like little shorts even that are just such a joy to watch because there's not a whole lot like them anywhere else. I mean, really the only places you can find stuff, in my opinion, like that are other Guillermo del Toro movies. Like, I mean, Hellboy, both Hellboy movies. But I mean, Hellboy 1 isn't my favorite, but there is some cool visual stuff going on, and Hellboy 2 has some incredible moments that just kind of like this movie too, except more so for me in Hellboy, where I want more of certain scenes in that movie where there are really cool production design things.
Shouts to Pacific Rim.
Yeah, shout it.
Oh man, I still haven't
Dude,
seen the
I
second
love
one.
that movie.
Okay, here's the thing. The second one, I mean, is not directed by Del Toro. It stars John Boyega, which, you know, I don't know. As much as there are times where I was like, oh man, I fucking hate this dialogue. There's a moment towards the end of the movie where I was like, wouldn't it be fucking wild if this happened? And like 30 seconds later, that happened. And I was like, that is the dumbest idea I've ever had. And I'm so fucking glad that they put it in this movie. But yeah, I mean, I love the first one with the huge asterisk of Charlie Hunnam being in it. But yeah,
Is Charlie Day in the first one, or is he in the second one?
Yeah, no, he's in both.
Okay, I thought so.
He's okay. If it tells you if this will help you distinguish the first and the second one, as far as like what to expect, he's in the second one much more.
I feel like it's a crime to have him be in a movie and not be the wackiest character in it. Like he might.
Pacific Rim 2 is not guilty of that crime. That is for sure.
Okay.
Oh, I'm remembering his storyline in Pacific Rim 2 now. Oh my god.
Man, that sounds like I need to see, because like honestly, I can do without any of like, I mean, I know whenever anyone makes this critique of a monster kaiju type movie, people jump down your throat. But I think that movies are important to be engaging on every aspect of their filmmaking. So the human stuff in Pacific Rim, I like want to vomit during. The action sequences are wonderful and delightful to watch. And once again, Guillermo del Toro's art department, just great. But yeah, Charlie Hunnam, not great.
In Pacific Rim. Wait, I thought you were talking about Charlie Day. Sorry. No, Charlie Hunnam, not great. I still haven't seen Lost City Z, which I know Mitchell's going to tell me I should watch because every time I bring up Charlie Hunnam, he's like, "Have you seen Lost City Z?" And I'm like, "I haven't. I don't want him to be vindicated."
You turned the corner on Rob Pattinson, didn't you? I'm just saying.
I need like another movie from Charlie Hunnam. It can't just be one. You know what I mean?
All right. I haven't seen him in very much, but I have disliked him in 2 or 3 things and liked him in one thing. You know, I tried to watch the first 2 episodes of Sons of Anarchy, and I wanted to just punch myself in the face, so I stopped. All right. Any closing thoughts before we take a quick break before recommendations?
I mean, I know we kind of shifted tone, and I hate to bring it back. I think the most iconic scene in this movie we barely touched on, which is the Pale Man.
Oh yeah.
Because that's, I don't know.
Or as I like to call him, Old Chicken Legs Johnson.
Yeah, holy cow! There's just so much about that scene that is, it's got
production for that like 5 minutes, like what they went to. It is really, it's the perfect amount of eerie while still being like a bright scene.
Yeah, I think that I mean, obviously we've talked about Doug Jones' performance being fantastic and the like makeup and everything there. I think just even the stakes in that scene creates a lot of good tension, even just without the horror visual aspect of it. You have you have the hourglass, being there to, pressure the time. You've got the door closing on her, have to climb up. He just so many things with just the visual paintings of these children being eaten and the pile of shoes. And then where she actually goes against the fairy's suggestion of which door to open. then getting the dagger from it is just really interesting. And then her choice of food that she decides to put everything on the line for is a fucking grape.
I actually thought about that this time because I thought about the idea of like, you know, being in a war-torn country where like your food is rationed and like, you know, fruit probably was like that huge luxury to her. And I do like I don't know why I hadn't thought of that before this meeting, but that is something that I finally thought of, and I was like, I get it. I fucking get it. Like if I don't know. I like I like grapes, and if you were just told me that I couldn't have grapes, and it just went on for a couple years, and then I saw some grapes, I might grab a grape or 2 or 6 or 10. Who knows?
They're full of sugar and juice, and she's 10.
Hey, they're a
Look,
good
all I know is
alternative to some other things, you know?
when I was 10 years old, I just wanted like hamburgers upon hamburgers, and then I'd remove everything besides the patty. You know?
Oh, you're one of those. Oh. It's really good. I was actually kind of mad at her in that moment. I was like, you know better. Like, I was like, did she forget? And then the fairies are telling her, no. Like, they told you, and there's this creepy ass thing sitting right there that you just saw. What? How did she not put 2 and 2 together? I would have done that at 10, and I was not a smart 10-year-old. Actually, that's where I peaked. But
and the fact that she picks up the plate of eyeballs, like who would do that? Like,
yeah, it's frustrating.
But I mean, I hate to bring it back down again, but like Guillermo del Toro has been pretty vocal about that, what that represents, and how the Pale Man represents the Catholic Church and the predatory aspects of certain members of that faith. And I think that is illustrated in just the fact that, you know, she does go for that food. It's not, you know, I mean, there's obviously like the upfront things. I think that's something I never thought about, Tyler, of the whole, like, why she would actually want a grape. And that's a good insight.
Yeah.
But it is very much like, you know, there's these innocent children who see something they can latch onto, or maybe they just want to like, or even just a little bit getting your toe in the door is very much can be a devastating thing with that subject matter. So I think that there's something there to go with as well. But I mean, just sure. I love that whole scene just because it is so iconic. Just like we've discussed, everything about it creates kind of this perfect sequence of just tension, fear, dread, wonder, awe, and kind of, you know, cheering the protagonist of the story on. Yeah, and it's just a wonderful scene. I don't know. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on it?
I would like to show this to people. Just lie to them, tell them it's a short, and show them just her drawing with the chalk, and then from beginning to end, from getting in to getting out. Because I also didn't know if she could draw another door. I didn't know if it was going to work. Like, and then to me, I didn't know if she was going to get stuck and what's her next step. But I think you're right. It's a masterclass in pretty much every element of filmmaking. And I think a lot on this show, I've kind of said the director used a textbook way to build tension, but it was so effective. And like, this is like a beautiful moment. In fact, when she first drops down there, it kind of felt like a gauntlet to me. I was kind of worried it was one of those things where you step on the wrong thing and an arrow shoots out from the side or something. And just to feel that danger immediately is that's a gift that comes together with your musical cues and with your environment. And of course we had built to that, but I think independent, beginning to end, like the fear, this is probably the scary. Yeah, this is the scariest part of the movie. Like, all the different things that you feel and how impeccable it looks is really, really impressive.
Yeah.
But I will say to the priests out there, grapes aren't going to do it. If you want to get in this ass, you better not just bring grapes. All right. Justin, Gwen, did you guys have anything before we leave?
Mitchell.
Oh, Mitchell, as always, I'm glad it wasn't me.
The relationship disappointments continue for you, Mitchell. I'm sorry.
I honestly knew it before I said it, and I'm not a very good person.
You're like Keanu Reeves on that bus. You got to keep it above a certain speed limit or you're fucked. I get it.
Self-control was not made for podcasts. That's terrible. Wow. Oh, I'm going to get canceled.
Well, a good message to the ladies, too. You're going to need to bring more than grapes to get in Mitchell's out.
Yeah, sure.
Bring a Mancala board as well.
Maybe if we play
I don't
Mancala
even
with
know if that's gonna
grapes,
be on the
I can be seduced.
Okay. Anyways.
All right. Anyway,
Jesus.
Fuck me.
Please close us.
did Gwen leave? Did she hit me
I'm
virtually?
here. I'm just giggling
Is that
and horrified and
Is that worse than the image of The Rock and Mickey Mouse?
this takes second place. Thanks for putting that back in my brain though.
Oh, you're not going to be able to sleep tonight.
Oh my gosh.
All right, should we just head to some
Please.
recommendations?
Yes.
All right, before we do, Tyler, let people know where they can reach us if they have ideas or thoughts or want to send me hate mail.
You can email us at rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram at rewatcherspod.
Dope. Well, we look forward to hearing from you guys, and thanks for listening. If you want to stick around, we'll have some fun chit chat about what we've been watching and listening and playing in quarantine. We'll see you in a minute. Welcome back to the Rewatchers in the Labyrinth. Let's step back into the real world and into quarantine and talk about what we've been able to do with our time here. Gwen, why don't you start us off?
Okay, I actually have something this week. So I've been listening to Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, which is a podcast. And something that I really miss about being a religious person is close reading of beloved texts in an introspective way, I guess. But so this podcast, it is Casper ter Kuile and Vanessa Zoltan. Vanessa Zoltan is a humanist chaplain. I believe she's an atheist. And Casper ter Kuile is, he's religious, but I don't remember his denomination. But anyways, so they chapter by chapter go through Harry Potter and talk about, they choose a theme or an idea and they read a chapter of Harry Potter through that lens. And it's just really sweet and introspective and almost meditative. And it fills a need that I didn't really realize that I'd had. So, for example, they read, I think it's chapter 9 of the first Harry Potter with the theme of friendship. And they do, their segments are things like a call to action or Lectio Divina, where they take a segment of the text and look at it closely and just, I guess, expand on it. But yeah, I've been really enjoying that this week, and I've just been listening to one a day, and it's 30 minutes of this really pleasant practice.
So do they on the episode, are they reading the chapter? I assume they're reading at least snippets or something.
Yeah, so they start out with like
second.
a 30-second summary each, and then they will read lines and snippets
Cool.
as they apply to the theme, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I have listened to many, many different Harry Potter podcasts, and this is one I've only dabbled in. I've actually kind of looked at certain subjects that I wanted to hear, and it is you usually look for hosts in a podcast to have, fun, good rapport. And when you said meditative, I think the way that it flows, I've only listened to so many podcasts that I think are, it is something that feels so curated but so natural at the same time. And so again, only a handful, but anytime we can talk about Harry Potter, I'm super down. But I think anyone, despite whatever you stand on religion, can enjoy like how people look into a text like Harry Potter, which can be looked at through so many different lenses.
That's interesting.
McKinley, what do you recommend?
I'm trying to remember all that I did. I had something and now it just blanked on me. I I've still been playing Final Fantasy. And what else have I done? Oh, okay. I made this recommendation 6 months ago, and so I won't go into as long of a spiel on it this time. But I rewatched The Lighthouse because it is now available on Amazon Prime. So if you have Amazon Prime, I would highly suggest watching The Lighthouse, and you will see one of the best performances ever by Willem Dafoe. You will be very uncomfortable, hopefully in a way that you appreciate by the end. But just a wonderful, just art piece of filmmaking. Everything from cinematography to performance to just tension building and surrealism. Just really great, and I really enjoy it. So I hope everyone else does too.
Cool. I'll go real quick. I binged a couple trashy things that you guys won't really enjoy, and I think that we would bond.
Did you watch that new Netflix reality show?
Don't judge me. I knew you. So
I feel like this is a question we could ask Mitchell every week and get the same reaction.
So there's a popular one. There's a big show called Love Island. It was big in the UK and it just came over here, but people love it. It's like got this cult following, but there's like 40 episodes a season. It's on like 3 or 4 nights a week, and I've always wanted to do it, but I don't have time. And so this is finally like a trashy island show that it was only 8 episodes, so I watched it. It's called Too Hot to Handle, and the premise is a bunch of hot people on an island, and they're vying for $100,000, but every time they have any sort of sexual contact, including kissing or masturbating, so you can't like do anything, you lose money from the pot. And I think I've seen enough reality TV that like I know how much BS there is, and so just the pure oozy trashiness of it, I enjoyed it so much. I did watch Love is Blind and The Circle. So Netflix specifically with these shorter reality shows has like, because I want to watch all the shit on Bravo, I just don't have time. Like I'd rather invest in storytelling. I already watched The Bachelor and Survivor, and to me that's enough reality TV, frankly. So I'm glad that Netflix is helping me out.
By delivering your bullshit in just like manageable chunks.
Yeah, you guys,
Yeah,
it is so.
I can
it's so bad good. Like there was only one real cliffhanger where I was like, I have to watch the next one. Screw you, Netflix. But watching these people, like, you are so curious who's gonna break. Like what? Like it's for me, it's easy to not have sex, but for these people that are clearly all just that's because anyway.
We don't need to get into that.
But just all these really hot people who are just like, it's also looking at someone's lifestyle and kind of hating it. Like the amount, no matter how religious or not religious you are, like the amount of sex these people have. And I'm like, sex empowerment all to you. To me, I don't think it's the greatest way to live. They're just really hot, slutty people who make money off of Instagram. And so there's like a love-hate relationship. But anyway, it's pure trash. And if you like that kind of thing, like it's less than 8 hours because they're only like 35 to 45-minute episodes. Anyway, it's called Too Hot to Handle. And yeah, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. The good thing that I watched
Riley has watched that yet, because she would always talk about Love Island when we would watch Twin Peaks, and so
I honestly think there's a couple moments in the first 2 episodes where I'm like, I think even a lot of, because I've never seen like Temptation Island or Fan, like there's a ton of these, but I'm like, I think most people would be able to turn it off. And also half the cast is British, and I'm just a sucker for an accent. I also binged another thing called Outer Banks on Netflix, which I saw the trailer and really didn't think was going to be good, but it's very much like it's murder mystery elements mixed with like the OC and Gossip Girl, which again, these are things I think Riley and I would both like, these teen WB dramas, but it's Netflixed up, like it certainly is a step up, but I watched 10 episodes in one day, guys, so I was shocked at how much. So I binged a couple crappy things. My other goal has been to watch Better Call Saul because I love Breaking Bad, and I just never jumped on the Saul train, even though I knew I'd like it, and I finally kind of invested a few episodes, and I'm 2 seasons in, and I just gotta say, if you like TV, you should be, whatever it takes, you need to spend all that fucking time in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with Jimmy McGill and Walter White. Is that it? Oh my. I'm fully in Saul mode now. But it's really delivered. It's the season end to end to season one kind of, I was a little confused, and there are some slow moments, but it is. And now I know people are saying this newest season has been incredible, but I'm just shocked at what Vince Gilligan can create out of this world. It is so bizarre and so engaging. So yeah, if you want to watch something bad, I've already told you. If you want to watch something good, please go watch Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad.
Cool.
Tyler Harris, you haven't gone, have you?
No, yeah, I have been watching a lot of new stuff this week. Like Tyler, I'm still in the throes of Final Fantasy VII.
What chapter are you on?
I am in chapter 10, I think. I've been going pretty slow because I'm just drinking it in, and
I do want to get your take. I thought I was playing it on just like the normal difficulty mode, but I have found it incredibly easy.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think it has been so far. Yeah, I mean,
But I don't think there was a harder option though.
No, I know that there is one that unlocks after the initial playthrough. But yeah, I think it's pretty easy. I just enjoy the hot swapping character, like switching characters so quickly and stuff like that. Like I think it flows so well. I will say, like, I didn't feel like it was super easy when I started. And especially when I played the demo like 4 or 5 months ago, I was really glad that I'd played that demo all the way through and then jumped in and got to do that first area again, because I feel like that's what made the combat click for me. But yeah, I mean, I have also been doing everything. I wonder if there's a chance I might be a little over leveled as far as balancing goes and stuff like that. Because I've spent probably more time than I should have in like Sector 5 and stuff like that. But yeah, I kind of have a similar feeling for sure. But yeah, I was really glad that they brought. Well, that's kind of a spoiler. I don't know that anyone who listens to this will give a shit. If you do skip ahead 15 seconds, I was so fucking glad that they brought back the Hell House, and that's a. I guess I should have asked where you were, but
the strangest moment, man.
It's so fucking good. You're fighting a fucking house, basically. Yeah, whatever. Fucking great. What a fucking awesome video game. Anyways, so other than Final Fantasy VII, I have fallen into the old familiar tar pit of Community, and I've just been having Community on in the background of stuff again. I'm like in the second season of Community. And then the other old thing I've been watching is I just got Batman Beyond, the complete series. On Blu-ray, and I've been watching that again, and it is really good. I just recently finished like the original Batman animated series, and this is kind of, for lack of a better description, kind of a direct sequel to that, as far as like that universe at least. But I will say, no matter who you are, just YouTube the Batman Beyond opening credits. Like it is the most early 2000s ass thing I've ever seen. And it's one of those things, like I think, like, having lived through times, I would get to the end of like a span of years and I'd be like, I wonder what people are going to think of that year, because it seemed pretty normal to me. But holy fuck, that is there is a vibe there that is inescapable. And man, yeah, just go YouTube that and watch it, and it's really great. But yeah, Batman Beyond's really cool. I think that I'm still pretty early, and it definitely feels like they're kind of getting their legs beneath them in the first few episodes. But from what I remember of watching it, I remember it going to some pretty dark and weird places, and I hope I hope I'm remembering that correctly, because I think that show's really great. So, but yeah, that's all I've been watching. So
Fun, Justin.
Okay, I don't have a ton of new stuff this week. Just like a recommendation in general, I think that I could think of. just as where I've been as far as my entertainment goes. Like I've sort of like I feel guilty, and I think we all experience this. I feel guilty about all the stuff that I am not consuming so much of the time. Like I've got a huge backlog of video games that I want to get to, um, books to read, shows to watch, movies, everything. But like just this past week, I've been pretty busy with work recently, and kind of just gotten in this habit of like playing and consuming things that I just do all of the time anyways. So like I've been playing StarCraft 2 again this week a bit, which is just kind of my one of my go-to games that I fall back on because it's really good, and I don't know. It's a fun time. I also saw just my weekly Doom Eternal plug. They they just announced their new event that they're doing in game where you can play and earn cosmetic items, which is kind of I could talk about kind of their choice for monetization and stuff, which they're not monetizing any of this stuff. It's all free, which is interesting. But anyways, they just showed off. There's a skin that you can get for one of the demons that is a hipster uh, Doom barista, and like last week I said I was pretty much done with Doom Eternal, but as soon as I saw that I was like, yeah, I kind of got to go back and play and earn these cosmetics, even though like I don't think I'm going to really be playing the multiplayer to even show it off in the future at any point. So, but I just kind of have to go back and do it. I don't know.
I think it'd be great if there was an option to play the base game with those skins for all the
with like all the demon skins.
Oh, yeah,
that
that'd be
would
cool.
be awesome.
There's
Yeah.
that Elvis Presley one that is so funny.
Yeah. Yep. Seeing because like your Doomslayer skins, like those do go through the single player, and so like seeing your like rainbow colored Doomicorn Doomslayer in those cutscenes is just it's fantastic. It's great. So yeah, I'll probably get back to that a little bit this week. I This one is a little bit heavy. I'm currently reading Crime and Punishment, and
Oh.
it's I've only ever gotten like a third of the way through, and I finally caught up to that point. In like I've tried reading it a couple times in the past, and now I'm like actually going to finish it. So I'm caught up to where I was in the past, and looking forward to actually figuring out what happens at the end of this story because I've never read it before, and I feel like I need to. So I'll update you all when I finish that one in the future, and whether or not it's a recommendation or not.
Cool.
What,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just one other thing. I did finally listen to the Thrice 4 album set that you recommended, Tyler McKinley, the Elements one, Fire, Water, Earth, and
Yeah.
Alchemy Index.
yeah, I finally listened to that this week as well, and I loved it. I was never like really into Thrice before, so I feel like I kind of missed out on a whole bunch of stuff. But I need to sit down and just like listen to that without any other distractions because I had it on while I was working and I tried to pay attention. And what I was able to pick up, like I absolutely adored it. But I want to like sit down and actually have like a real listening experience with it. So I got to get back to that, but I really did like it.
Justin, that makes my heart just melt, and I am so glad. Oh man, that's good. I'm happy.
I wish I could have experienced this like when it came out. That would have been amazing.
Dude, yeah, senior year of high school was lit because that was released into 2 of fall and spring.
Yeah.
So that was super cool. I did have a question that I want to know if those of you, Gwen mainly, who have been on the 3-body problem train, I saw an article that just blew my mind, and so I had to YouTube it. And someone has made the 3-body problem in Minecraft, and has the whole series on YouTube, like the whole like they did like machinima shit. And I didn't watch it because
what?
Yeah, I didn't watch it because I don't know the story. So like I watched like the first like 2 minutes of it, and I was like, I don't get it, but obviously, like someone who's read the book, I want to know if you guys had seen it and what you thought about it.
I hadn't even heard about that. I'll have to check that
sounds
out.
amazing.
I pretty much saw a screenshot on an article and was like, "Ha, that's cool," and then just left it alone.
I just want to know how the opening scene plays out from the Three Body Problem, because yikes.
Is it at a Chinese military base or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, then that's definitely it.
Wow. Oh my god. Yeah, holy shit. I'm looking at screenshots right now and Jesus. I used to think Minecraft was good. I guess I'm like back to neutral on it until I find out what's going on with this.
Oh.
But holy shit.
Dude,
Look, Minecraft is another very relaxing, meditative exercise. So just shut your mouth.
I should say I played Minecraft, like really played Minecraft for the first time this week.
Oh wow.
And, I mean, I started just being like, oh, because I was mainly just trying to like get something that Max would be able to be distracted by. However, I ended up playing it all day, and
Yep, that's kind of how it goes.
at first I was like, I'll just see what I can build, and then I was like, I'll just make this room like my living room, and then I ended up building my whole fucking house, and I built our little podcast area. I've got like the curtains hanging up, and I've even got like the checkerboard foam pattern going on, and
I'm gonna need a screenshot of that, please and thank you.
I will send you guys a screenshot of my house in Minecraft because I just finished it today. And yeah,
cool.
And then I started building. I was like, you know what this place needs? It needs a 200-foot tall statue of naked Zeus. So I built his foot, and that was really hard. So we'll see if I ever finish that.
That's the thing about Minecraft. It was easy for me only 2 or 3 times to like just sit there and build for a really long time. But then the desire to go back to it, I got a little stressed. I was like, I'm going to have to build Zeus's whole scrotum. And that's just, it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, I was just worried about how long it was going to take me to get to work on Zeus's scrotum. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot in between. So
that's the problem solving I want. You know? I think I learned a lot from the ankle bones that I can really do some magic with the ball.
Oh boy. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning into the Rewatchers pod. Next week is going to be Gwen's pick, and we're super stoked to watch another movie together. And yeah, my name is Mitchell Marshall, and my co-hosts in alphabetical order of their middle names are.
Oh shit! Wait, what if 2 of us have the same? Oh shit! Yeah, other letters, idiot.
Gwen Hammer.
Wait, I don't know her middle name. I know.
I know is I'm after Tyler. That's all I know.
I knew the Tylers.
You guys have known each other like your whole lives. Just say them. Just go in order. Come on.
I don't know, Justin. I don't know. Yeah, Justin. What's your middle name?
Justin. He doesn't want that out there.
I'm just gonna guess that it's Irving. So you're next.
What if it's like Zachary, so he's just not going to talk?
Okay, I just realized I was not doing push to talk while I was saying my middle name.
Oh, we thought you were I'm not.
Honestly, I thought you were just protecting your identity.
Time. No, I've seriously been talking this entire time and just realized I was not pushing the button. No, it's Scott. My middle name's Scott, so I should be like one of the last ones, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you're at the end, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay. Tyler McKinley.
Tyler Harris.
Gwen Hammer, I guess.
No, it'd be me, Justin Hammer.
All right, just so in case you guys want to know who hosts this podcast, it's Mitchell Marshall, Tyler Harris, Tyler McKinley, Gwen Hammer, and Justin Hammer. Okay, I might not do that to you guys anymore. All right, well that's the end.
That's the end.
Bye.